Welcome back to another episode of Silent Pal Stay at Home and Watch Movies. I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hey, everyone.
And today we're going to be reviewing Greenland. And just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. A family struggles for survival in the face of a cataclysmic disaster. My first pro is the action in the movie. Once it gets started, it doesn't stop. Once it begins, it just keeps going. There's kind of no time to catch your breath or pay attention to something else because you're always seeming like you're on the run. Second pro is the star power. We have Gerard Butler, Morena Baccaine, Scott Glenn, and even David Denman. People know him from The Office. I mean, these actors, some of them don't even have a big role, but they're just in the movie, which kind of like caught me off guard when I was watching it, especially David. When he appeared on scene, I was like, wait, aren't you the guy who was in The Office? His role is kind of small, but it does play a significant part in the movie to keep the plot going. So now on to my cons. Like I said, the star power in the movie is there, but I think it makes up for the lack of story or development of characters. Okay, first of all, we never get an explanation why the main couple in the movie are not together. They're drifting apart. Slowly through the movie, we kind of get hints at it, and then at the end, we get a really brief 2 sentences and that's it. I would have liked it if there was more character development, so that way when we see them facing these struggles or these situations where they need to make decisions or something negative happening on the screen as we're seeing the story progress, we actually feel compassion or we feel closer to them. We care. This is a thing that me and Touly have always talked about. Getting to be one with the character is so important in movies that once something happens to them, you feel for them and it makes you want to root for them. In this movie, it didn't really get established. We just got thrown into this situation as like, here's a guy, here's a woman, they're having a problem. And we never really felt close to one or the other. As a matter of fact, this made me hate the mom's character. In a sense, I really didn't feel close to her. I kind of started drifting apart from her. This happened when she was at the first base when they found out her kid had diabetes and he couldn't board the plane because he was rejected. So she told the military lady, what would she do if it was her family? And the lady responded to, my family did not get picked. In this situation, I felt the mother was overstepping her rights, demanding something from other people. She felt that she had the authority or she had the right to say, you know, it's my family, not yours. To me, that rubbed me the wrong way. It made me feel the mother was kind of rude in that situation. We drifted apart. The next thing is, for a mother, if you pay close attention, her son has diabetes, and when her kid's sugar drops, she gives him insulin, not food. When she tells the kid to take his meds, instead of giving him insulin, she gives him sugar or food to basically combat the situation. If you really know about these things, that's not the right way to do it. She would have made a really bad nurse. In this situation, I think somebody in the movie should have said, hey, I don't think that's the right way of doing that, you know, to keep it more realistic. Because when I saw this, it just threw me off and I was like, I wasn't really in the movie anymore. My next con is the special effects. They were really not consistent and it seems sometimes they fell really short for me. At one point, we do see special effects that wows me and I'm like, wow, this is really great. But then we see another one that kind of made me feel like I was watching a C budget movie. You know, maybe somebody didn't render the image correctly or the special effects fell short. And I think it was due to the different studios that were being used. And I've seen this in other movies, especially animated movies, where rendering falls short in some scenes than others. And then at the end of the movie, we see that there's different special effects studios or rendering animation studios. So they're not really on the same page. They're doing their own thing. And at the end, when they're trying to put them together, they don't really fit in a sense. So I think that's what happened with this situation. And my next con is also the color correction in the movie. At one point, we start noticing that the characters, there's this tint over them because of the sky. It's a yellow tint to the movie. Sometimes when I saw this, it felt like it was done correctly. And in other scenes, it felt like they just put a filter over the camera or something just to be like, oh yeah, we forgot about this. And they skipped over doing it the correct way, especially in some scenes. The lighting, we see it's during the daylight, let's say at noon, and then the next shot or angle is probably in the evening. So it doesn't really match with the color correction. And then close to the end of the movie, we start noticing there's ash falling. And if you think about this, it doesn't really make logical sense since the beginning, when the first piece fell and hit, I think it was Tampa, there was fires. And when there's fires, there should be ash. So since the beginning of the movie, we should have seen ash falling from the sky, especially when the kid says, look, Dad, the sky's on fire. So it should be raining down since the beginning of the movie, not till the end when they're running toward the bunker in Greenland. With that, I'm going to pass it on to my friend Touly and see how he saw the movie and what grade he gave this movie.
I think what I enjoyed about the film, Sal already brought up, and that is the star power. Realizing who was in this film as characters were being introduced, it sort of gave me hope that the movie would be good in terms of believability of the situation, how these characters grow and react towards one another, and to an extent, I feel like how a father would react to wanting to protect his family, especially his son, how a mother would go to whatever length to plea, as Sal exemplified earlier in his review, to a military personnel about trying to get her son on board the plane despite her not having any leverage, after trying to get some leverage by saying, what if this was your family? And then that reasoning got shot down immediately, and for her to still use that as a mean to protect her son. So in a way, I do see her in some of the things that were done in this film by these characters. I wouldn't say to an extreme side, but to an illogical side that probably would make sense in this sort of like a disaster film where you're just putting this into the situation where you have to be desperate and do whatever it takes. But with that being said, there were moments in this film that sort of contradicted that as well. It probably does speak to just these characters still being human, and when they realize that what they've done or committed goes against the grain in their character or their nature, that they do take a step back and do what is right. I'm going to use the example of when the mom and the son went to the store to grab some supplies, and the store was mobbed by people, and the individual who was standing before the mom and son could have made that situation very bad, but he let them go. The movie puts humans in particular, not just our main characters, into situations where we see the best of them in like a bad situation, or if you want to look at it like this too, which for me, for the most part, I did ended up looking like this, which ended up being a con. It brings out the worst in people when things go bad. I sort of agree with Sal, what he said about this movie being kind of like non-stop. For me, it wasn't so much like it being non-stop action, but more so of it being like a movie that had non-stop sequences of bad things happening one after another, and the good things that came out of this were the family members always lucking out and surviving these situations, because at any point of these bad scenarios that our main characters got themselves into, something bad could have happened to any of them. And by bad, I mean one of them could have just easily gotten killed. From when the father was boarding the plane and trying to get out, and then that area got raided, and then people started getting gunned down by the military because people were just trying to find an escape route through getting onto the plane, to when the father fought against those two guys who wanted his bracelet, but instead of him dying, it was the guy who was trying to defend him from these two guys. I already mentioned the store scenario between the mother, the son, and the person who was in their presence who could have gotten them too, but he let them go, to when the son was taken by the two strangers. The mother could have been dealt with in a more lethal manner by the strangers, but it always seemed like luck was always on this family's side, and for it to happen over and over, it threw me off, and it just brings me back to this whole notion of plot armor. I understand that when it comes to like the key players of a film, there is some plot armor to them, so we get to see them throughout the film. I understand that, but I feel like for a movie where you only have a certain amount of time to develop your characters and see them react to one another, and all the things that would want me to get invested into a character, I feel like there was too much plot armor in this film, scene into scene. And then when the good things happen, it just felt like, again, luck was just always on their side. Like the mother walking down the highway, and then a car post was like, hey, do you need a ride? To when the father asked the guy who eventually led to his confrontation with those two men who wanted his bracelet, he just walked up to him and it's like, hey, can I get a ride? And it's like, sure. But then you get situations that kind of contradict at the beginning, where the father denied taking the girl of this other family with them, and it's like, okay, so bad things are happening to other people in this film, but to you guys, in this disastrous situation that people are finding themselves in, things always seem to work out for you guys over and over and over. And that to me sort of became the theme of the film. It wasn't so much about asteroids and comets falling down onto Earth. It was more about this family who got separated and kept on getting separated throughout the film, and escaping these possibly life-death situations from other human beings, which again, given the situation that these humans were being put in, it sort of just brought out the worst of a lot of these people. And because of that, I pretty much feel the same way as Sal, in that the characters, they weren't really developed, and I wasn't really invested in any of them, unfortunately. I think it would have probably made more sense if they just kept the family together, and and then at one point, maybe they got separated, and then they just get back in another arc. Like, don't make them getting separated the whole shebang of the film, and then for them to just reunite at the end, and that's it. Putting them together actually would kind of help, in my opinion, develop the relationship between the father and the mother, and let us know more about what happened to them that made the family feel kind of separated already. Like, why is the relationship between the mom and dad kind of fragile, or where it's currently at, and why did they had to go through this disaster situation in order to rebuild that? It's like, I think I would have enjoyed that component a lot more, and in order to do something like that, you need the two characters to be around one another a whole lot more. In the end, the payoff after a 2 hours film, I just wasn't feeling it, and it starts from our characters. If our characters aren't established enough to the point where I'm invested in them, it's gonna be rather difficult for me to buy into all the other components, and when all the other components themselves just add on top of what is not already being portrayed by these characters to a point that I just want to root for them, it just makes a bad situation even worse. So I'm gonna give the film a 3 out of 10. I did not like this film. I've seen better disastrous films out there that at the very least, even if the story didn't make sense, I felt something about the characters. I was hoping for something like this in this film given the star power, but it didn't go that way.
For me, the one character that kind of got a slightly developed was not even one of the main protagonists. He was the father of the wife, played by Scott Glenn. Him, when he gave the speech to Gerard Butler about like his wife, she's not there anymore, but he can still smell her, and then he can't distinguish what's real or not, kind of like that he's living in the past. He's living at the house, stuck there just for his wife who's not there anymore. And when the daughter says, "Dad, come with us," and he says nope, he's like, "I'm gonna stay here. This is where your mom died, and this is where I'm gonna find my end. Eventually I'll meet with her, in the afterlife." To me, that was kind of a more really quick paced character development than Gerard Butler ever got in the movie. And I'm like, Gerard Butler had a lot of time to develop his character, but they didn't do it. But this guy who's just on screen for, I would say, 5 minutes or so, like I was like, this guy's really interesting. I'm kind of gonna root for him, but at the same time, I know he's gonna die. So it kind of made me feel something for him that I never felt for the other characters in the movie. And I agree with Touly. There's other disaster movies better than this out there, especially with Gerard Butler. I would say maybe even Geostorm is a better movie than this one. I guess he's the kind of action guy who's been through disasters before, because all those Fallen movies, Olympus, Angel, and London Has Fallen, he's had some roles that we kind of come to expect stuff from him in the action department. And in this movie, like Touly said, it was mostly just about luck. He got into something and luckily he got out of it safe. He got into another situation that was nasty, but then he got out of it because of sheer luck. So for me, my final grade is going to be 3.5 out of 10. This movie was not good. It was horrible. Don't go see it. Watch something else. So I guess that does it for this review of Greenland. Please join us next time when we're going to review Words on Bathroom Walls.
But when you have schizophrenia, people can't wait to make you someone else's problem. That's why we end up on the streets, screaming at nothing, waiting to die. No one wants to grant our wishes.
Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our social media links below. And like always, keep watching movies.